Well, it's time to have a look at some of the stories making headlines in the media from around the world. And we begin with the news that a new hospital in Wuhan, the centre of the coronavirus outbreak, will open on Monday. The 1,000-bed facility was built in an astonishing 8 days. If you look at the BBC News website, you can see the time-lapse video of the construction. City AM asks the question, could an Australian model be on the table for an EU trade deal with the UK? Boris Johnson will today fire the starting gun on negotiations with the European Union. The Times, as with a lot of the British papers this morning, headlines the attack in London on Sunday. Terror returns, it says. The man shot dead by police was recently released from prison. Well, they waited 50 years. Now the Kansas City Chiefs are the 54th Super Bowl champions. They beat the San Francisco 49ers 31 points to 20. And the Telegraph runs with Prince William's swipe at Bafta diversity, or lack of it. But it wasn't just Prince William who spoke about the need for change. Star of The Joker, Joaquin Phoenix, who won Best Actor, criticised what he said was systemic racism in the film industry. Well, with me, Cornelia Meyer, Chief Executive of MRL Corporation. It's good to see you, Cornelia.
Great to see you again, Ben.
Let's start with the latest on coronavirus and this new hospital. It's amazing to think a 1,000-bed facility can go up and be completed in just 8 days.
But only in China can you do it. And as your correspondent said, this is, a centralized economy at its best. And when you think about China, when you see how quickly Pudong, for instance, in China, in Shanghai came up. The first time I went to China, there was no Pudong, and then when I went again in the early noughties, there was Pudong. So that's good. That's good. But part of the problem is also that it has been kept quiet for too long and not addressed for too long. And with these pandemics, apparently, the sooner you get to it, the better. So the hard infrastructure is one thing, and the measures now is one thing, but the measures right at the beginning were probably a bit lacking.
And of course, the big concern is once they start to bring the Lunar New Year holiday, as it has been extended, to a close, the movement of people once again within China, hundreds of millions on the move. The fear is that that could spark another surge in cases being transmitted.
Yes, and you see that a lot of companies actually say, okay, we are not opening our doors because for precisely that reason, because there's a lot of people went home for the Lunar New Year, and their place of work is very far from where they live. And last time during the SARS virus, the GDP of China sort of had 2% less growth than projected. So this time it will probably be more because it's more interlinked with the global world. And the ramifications for global stock markets, not just for the Chinese stock market, is there. And you look at the oil price, the premier fuel for transport. It needs, goods to be shipped around and people to fly around. Well, it's now at about 56. It's come down from the mid-60s to 56.
Price of a barrel of Brent crude.
Of a barrel of Brent crude. So it has big ramifications.
It's interesting you bring up the effect financially. Commodities down, oil down, mainland Chinese stocks down.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Some stocks, are up, as if you produce face masks and so on. But it has ramifications because these supply chains are so interlinked. And for China, it had already this is a double whammy because it already had the trade wars, which didn't help, right? And now this is not very good.
Talking about an interconnected world, Britain is going to start trying to work out how its new connections will work after Brexit with the rest of the EU. City AM is talking about the Australian model. What do they mean?
Well, I think they mean a model where you still will have some border checks and where you have zero alignment. Now, you know, yesterday Dominic Raab was on the Andrew Marr show. He was also, which is on the BBC, he was also on Sky News, and he said, okay, regulatory alignment is out of the question. And this stands against Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission, the President of the EU Commission, who says, if you want a quick deal, you need to have regulatory alignment.
Regulatory alignment, just for those not familiar with the jargon and the technology, meaning that Britain, when it makes goods and provides services, adheres to the rules and regulations that apply throughout the rest of the EU.
Adheres to or is in alignment, you know, when it comes to the meat products or whatever industrial standards, is in alignment. But Boris Johnson is very clear. He does not want alignment. He especially does not want jurisdiction. He really does not want, because once you have alignment, then is who will be the arbiter of whether you're aligned or not. So he does not want the EU courts to have jurisdiction. So this is going to be very interesting. Michel Barnier, the chief negotiator of the EU, will announce his view today, as will Boris Johnson. But this is the going-in position, and in negotiations you always have a little bit of grandstanding when you go in. So we'll have now 11 months to figure it out.
Yes, the clock is ticking. Meanwhile, a lot of the front pages in the UK dealing with this case, this attack on Sunday in South London, and police believe the suspect who stabbed people on a high street had been freed from jail just days ago after serving a sentence for terrorism-related offences. The government saying that it's going to bring forward changes to the law on the release of such people very soon.
Yeah, and you can understand that. You see, this Sudesh man who was the perpetrator this time, and then we had, remember, just a few months back, we had Usman Khan on London Bridge, who was exactly the same thing. He had just been released early, and Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, as the Home Secretary, which is the Interior Minister of Britain, came out and said this needs to change. So I think expect this to be addressed with some matter of urgency, and especially as the Conservatives have such a big majority in the House of Commons, and as everybody is sort of, you know, really quite spooked about this, expect it to go quite swiftly.
Although the counterpoint, I suppose, some would say that if people are not rehabilitated and they're kept in prison for longer, there's risk of further radicalisation, according to investigations that have found that goes on in prison. Absolutely,
and it's a you cannot win. Now, a good example to look at is Saudi Arabia. They had a quite successful de-radicalisation program in the noughties. So one needs to see, you know, what can one learn from other countries who've had de-radicalisation programs, as well as obviously sort of trying to make sure that these things don't happen.
OK, let's take a look at some sport, and, well, sporting fixtures don't come much bigger than the Super Bowl.
No, they don't. And I used to work and live in the United States, and that was a big thing. And I once had done off-site on Super Bowl weekend. That did not go down well.
So who are you rooting for then this time round?
I actually did root for the Kansas City Chiefs, just because they hadn't won it in such a long place, and they were from the Midwest, and it's all cuddly and nice, and that I was thrilled that they won.
Were you?
Yeah.
Good, good. Did you watch it?
No, I didn't. I watched the Baftas.
Oh, you watched the Baftas. Which takes us nicely. We heard of. We were speaking to some fans earlier who were absolutely jubilant, and you know, and not just them being jubilant, but the people who rake in all the advertising money from a game like this.
Oh yeah, and it's the advertising weekend in the US, and it's cool ads. These ads are really super cool.
Yeah. You mentioned the Baftas. Some criticism and controversy this time round. Just explain what that's based on.
Well, it's because it was basically an all-male lineup for directors, and it was an all-white male up for the acting awards. And in this day and age, we should be more diverse. And I thought the Prince William got the tone just right. You know, he didn't labor it, but he said, "Look, we do need to address this." But personally, what I personally felt was very good, that for summer, it got the best documentary, which is a Channel 4 documentary about a female doctor who was sort of holed up in Aleppo in Syria, and it sort of just brings the whole malaise of, be it Syria, you had the Yemen story of these things going on in the Middle East. So to me, that documentary made, got the best documentary. I was very, very happy. But this doesn't take away, yes, we do need more diversity.
And are you a film fan? Do you go and see much at the cinema?
I watch films on airplanes and at home.
And how much are you influenced by awards like these? Does it sway what you choose to watch or not really?
It may, because I mean, it may unconsciously. Don't think really, but it may unconsciously, because I've heard about it. You know, I read things about economics. So if I sort of bump into write-ups on films that may make it more interesting to watch. Yeah.
So things like The Wolf of Wall Street probably right up your street. Cornelia, really good to see you. Thanks for going through the papers with us today on The Briefing. That's Cornelia Meyer. I'm Ben Bland. Thank you for watching. Plenty more still to come. Take care.